Hello. On September 6th, the shortlist for this year's Booker Prize is going to be announced, so this group of 13 books is going to be cut down to only 6 novels. So I thought I'd make a video giving my thoughts and impressions about this year's prize so far, since I've read some more of these books since the long list was announced, and compare some of the novels to each other and look at some surprising parallels between the books in terms of style or themes of them. And also give my predictions of what I think might be on this year's shortlist, because it's always fun to speculate about that. And if you've been reading along, if you have any strong favorites that you want to be shortlisted for this year's prize, please let me know about that in the comments below. It's always fun to discuss that. And I have to admit right off the bat, I'm not a complete authority on this group of books, since I've still only read 8 and a bit of them. I'm in the midst of reading one of the other ones, but that's kind of a conscious thing, because last year I did read the entire long list before the shortlist was announced, and then it almost felt a bit anticlimactic then still following the prize afterwards, because I didn't have anything new to read. I mean, it's always good to discuss books in more depth and really look at them in a much more dynamic way, which I think, you know, book prizes encourage us to do. A book that we might initially dismiss, to consider it from different angles and see how the author is actually doing something really interesting with it. But yeah, I have read 8 and a bit of them, and I'm not going to go into too full depth about each of these books. I'm just sort of looking at the group as a whole. If you want to know my thoughts about each of the books that I have read, I'll put links to my full reviews in the description below. So I am almost hoping that there will be some books on the shortlist that I haven't read, so that I will still have them to discover. But yeah, I do have some books on this list that I feel really passionate about and that I really hope to see on the shortlist. So yeah, looking at them as a whole, I mean, it's you can't draw an overall theme of what the authors are doing, or what the judges have picked certain kinds of books to be on the list, because there's a huge diversity here in terms of styles and themes and characterization, and there are authors writing about very different parts of the world. There's authors writing from very different perspectives, because on this year's prize we have the youngest author to ever be listed for the prize, as well as the oldest author to ever be listed for the prize. And so yeah, I think you can't draw any like big theme looking at all of the books, but there are certain titles you can look at comparison compared to each other, and see sort of surprising crossovers between them. I think most notably you can look at the books The Trees, The Seven Moons of Maali, Almeida, and Glory, and how these authors use a kind of satirical tone and quite a humorous tone to tell a tale that's like quite contemporary and quite bitingly satirical, and also that they kind of utilize genre to tell a story about contemporary life. And I've found these books to be the most surprising and delightful in that way. I mean, maybe it just is reflective of my reading taste at the moment, but I really appreciate a story that has a really good, strong plot that draws you through it, as well as a lightly humorous tone while looking at very serious subject matter, and how these authors get the balance of that in their stories, I think is so skillful and intelligent and really well done. And so yeah, I just completely adored all 3 of these books. In particular, The Seven Moons of Maali, Almeida, I mean, what a surprise this novel is. I was a bit trepidatious going into it, because I've not read the author's first book, which is about cricket, and just knowing that that was the theme of the first book, it kind of slightly put me off. I was like, oh, what is this story going to be about? But then got into it and just like, wow, what a surprise, and was completely swept away by it. And it's a book I didn't know anything about before the book prize, and so I'm so glad that they've highlighted this book and brought it to my attention, and now I've read it, and yeah, I think it is just spectacular. And again, what a beautiful cover. It's also really interesting to consider Nightcrawling alongside Small Things Like These, because even though these stories are set in very different parts of the world and at different time periods, they both take a very concentrated look at an individual's life within a community and how certain institutions within that community is really failing both the community as a whole and certain individuals. And so, you know, even though these books are very different from each other, they do have that like interesting crossover, and I think that's it's really compelling how both of them, and really moving how both of them draw you into these very personal stories to give a wider look at what is happening in society and how society is failing, yeah, both the communities and certain individuals, and yeah, both have such strong poetic writing styles. They are so well crafted, and yeah, just both great books. You could also really interestingly consider Booth and Trust and Case Study alongside each other as books which are set in history and look at particular individuals from a new angle, in the way that these stories like question the way that we understand the popular understanding of history and particular events in history, and how we understand individuals in the past, how these individuals have come to symbolize something larger than themselves, but the actual, you know, life of that person can't really be known, and they take unique angles to consider that. I mean, I've still not read Trust or Case Study. I'm still really looking forward to reading Case Study, but yeah, just knowing what the stories are about, I think it's interesting to compare them to each other. It also feels like Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies and After Sappho use quite radical narrative techniques to tell their stories, and, you know, make us question what the novel is and what the novel can do, and they also give quite interesting looks at womanhood. So I am still reading After Sappho, and I am, you know, I've sort of started it for the second time, and I am really enjoying these different portraits of women in a particular you know, set of decades in a time period, and the kind of overarching influence of the model of Sappho upon their lives. So, and I do still really want to read Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies. It's a novel I think I'll really enjoy, and I've just yet heard how unique it is. So yeah, really looking forward to that still. I'm sure you can make other parallels between many of these other novels, but those are just some that I picked up on so far. So the question of what will be on this year's shortlist, it's a tricky one, and there are books that I haven't read, which I have, you know, I've been seeing other people's reactions and thoughts to them. I've seen quite mixed or negative reactions to the novel Trust, and also Treacle Walker, and so yeah, I don't hold too much hope for those books. Now, amongst the other ones, yeah, ones that I absolutely loved and feel really strongly about, definitely The Trees and Small Things Like These. Also the Colony, I think is absolutely amazing and unique what she does in this narrative. It's a book that I read earlier this year, and it's been so wonderful seeing it gain more of a readership, and it feels like there's a real momentum behind this book. So I think it could come out really strong. But then, you know, like I said, the Seven Moons of Maali Almeida was such a wonderful surprise for me, and I think is such an incredibly crafted novel. So yeah, definitely I think that as well. Also, yeah, and I have seen some more like mixed responses to Glory, but I do think it's really powerful what she does in this story, and giving a sort of overall look at the country, which then becomes much, with lots of, different voices and perspectives, but then becomes a much more concentrated and personal story when a certain character enters into their narrative. So yeah, absolutely loved Glory as well. I did really enjoy Booth. I think it is a strong historical novel. I know some people have found it a bit more of a slog, but yeah, I think this was really good, and is possibly a contender, but I'd have to go with my gut instinct and say that Nightcrawling is more likely to be on the shortlist. So yeah, if I have to pick my, whoa, it was inevitable, wasn't it? I was going to drop the books at some time, trying to wrangle with this big pile of books. So yeah, if I have to pick my personal shortlist, it would be these 6 novels. I think they're all such wonderful, creative, immersive reading experiences that I just loved, and so I'd be really happy to see them on the shortlist. But yeah, there may be some surprises, and yeah, I may feel differently after I've read all of these books. So yeah, let me know in the comments below if you agree with my choices, if you disagree with my choices, if you have any other personal favorites on the list, if you've read all of the books, or even if you've only read one of them and feel really strongly about it and want to see it be a champion for this year's Booker Prize. Please let me know about that in the comments below. And but yeah, I hope you're doing well and reading good things, and I will speak to you again soon. Bye bye.